In this video, we are going to create this modern portfolio website using React, Tailwind, and framermotion. We're going to create this from absolute scratch, and I will be explaining every single step. I will also show you how to customize this as your own portfolio website as well. Let me walk you through the website. You're going to create this part by part, and the first part is going to be the navigation bar. We have a logo, the links to different sections, these social media links, and of course for the smaller screens the nav bar is responsive. When the screen is small enough, we get this drop down menu. Next, we're going to create this home section with this image and this hover effect and this text with gradient effect. And also, we're going to be animating every single section using framermotion. If I refresh, you can see this small, cool animation. And the second section is going to be the technologies. Next section is the projects. And finally, we have this contact section. This button is actually working. When you click on this button, you're going to be able to send an email. I will also explain how to do that as well. So, if you are ready, let's get into it. So to create the project from scratch, just create a new folder on your desktop and open that file inside VS Code. Here I have my empty folder. To set up the project, we're going to visit a couple of websites, and you can find the links in the description to these websites. First, we are going to create the React project with Tailwind inside, and we're going to follow these steps to create the project. Next, we're going to add the font that we are going to use using Google Fonts. We're going to be using Poppins. Next, for the animations, we're going to go to the framermotion's website. And using npm install, we're going to install framermotion. And finally, for the icons, we're going to use React icons. So we will install that using npm install as well. Let's go into Tailwind and follow these steps. To create the project, we're going to use Vite. So let's copy this first line and paste it inside the terminal. So this command uses npm package manager to create a React project using Vite. And it also names the project my project. So we can actually change that to a dot. Otherwise, it is going to create a new folder inside this current folder. Let's press enter. It is going to ask to install the following packages, which is create Vite. Say yes. Package name can stay the same. Let's install the dependencies using npm install. And here we have the React project. Next, we are going to add Tailwind. So we have done the first step. We didn't use cd project because we didn't create a new folder named my project. We have created the project inside the current folder, so don't get confused with this. Next, we are going to copy this and paste it inside the terminal. So this line of command is going to install Tailwind CSS, post CSS, auto prefixer as dependencies. That's what the -d means. Press enter. So after this is done, let's copy this second line and paste it. This is going to initialize Tailwind and create a config file here. Press enter. And you will see two files created, post CSS config.js and Tailwind config.js. After this is done, we are going to copy and paste the template paths. Let's go into the config file, delete all of this, and paste it here. So this is basically how the Tailwind looks for its class names, telling Tailwind to look for its classes inside index.html file and inside the source folder. to look for files that are JavaScript files, TypeScript files, and JSX files. Next, we're going to copy the utility classes inside index.css file, inside the source folder. Let's delete all of this and paste it. And with this, we are done. Let's go into the source folder and clean this up a little bit. Let's delete this SVG. Let's delete the app.css file. Inside app.jsx file, delete all of these imports and clean this component up. Let's create a div that says hello world just to check if Tailwind is working. And using npm run dev, let's run the project in the browser. Click on this link. And as you can see, Tailwind is working. Now that this is done, we can close this website. Next, we are going to add pop-ins. Click on this button. Click on Get Embed Code. We're gonna copy these links and paste it inside the index.html file. We need to paste it inside the head section. Also, you can change the title of the website to your own name. So now that we connected the font to the HTML, we can go into the CSS file, select everything inside the page, and set the font family to Poppins. And as you can see, we have the font as well. Let's close this up and install framermotion. Copy this line. Let's stop the server and paste this. And we can close this one as well. And finally, we're gonna install React icons. Let's copy this and paste it once more. So we have done installing the packages. We can run the server again. And now that we have everything we need, we can start the project. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're gonna go part by part. The first thing that we are going to do is to create the components that we're gonna need. So inside the source folder, let's create a folder named components. Let's also delete this assets folder. Inside components, let's create a navbar.jsx file, hero.jsx, tech.jsx, projects, and contact. We are going to import these components into the app.jsx file. Let's also clean this up. To be able to import these files into the app.jsx file, first we need to create functional components inside. And to quickly do that, we will use this extension called React Snippets. Make sure you install this extension. After you install it, you can come into this empty JSX file and type down RAFCE. And as you can see in the description, it is going to create a arrow function and it is going to export it. We can delete this import. It's not necessary anymore. As you can see, we have the functional component. It is a arrow function and it takes the name of the function from the file name. Let's do the same for the others. Now that we have functions inside all of the components, we can import them. We are going to import the components inside a main. The components inside are going to be stacked on top of each other. So we can turn this main into a flex container and change the flex direction to column. Center the items. Let's give it a padding on the x-axis of 4. That means padding left and right 1 rem. And for the screens that are bigger than medium, it is going to be 8. And for the screens that are large, it is going to be 16. Inside, let's import the components. As you can see, once you finish typing down the component, my VS Code automatically imports it. If that doesn't happen for you, you need to import it at the top. Let's import the hero as well. And here we have the components in the middle. And if you use DevTools, you can see it better. Here is the main element. And we have the components stacked on top of each other because we set the flex direction to column. Next, we are going to set a background, and to set the background, we're going to use a background snippet. Find the link in the description to this website. In this website, there are a lot of ready-to-use copy and paste backgrounds. We're going to use this one, copy code. Let's paste it at the top of this main, and we're going to change everything until this background, so you can delete this part. Let's set it to fixed and set the Z index to -10 to push it back so it doesn't overlap anything inside the website. Set it to minimum age screen so it covers the entire page, and width to full. And that is it with the first part. Now we can start to create these components one by one, starting with the navbar. As you have seen at the beginning of the video, the navbar is going to be a responsive navbar. And after we're done with the styling of the navbar, we're going to create the responsiveness right away. Let's change this div to a nav. It is going to be fixed at the top. And let's set the Z index to a high number so it stays on top of everything else inside the page. It is going to be a flex container and with 100%. Center the items and justify between to put all the available space in between the elements that we are going to create. You're going to have a border at the bottom, and it is going to be a gray border, background black, -70. This will create a black background with 70% opacity. Because we're going to create a glass effect, we need to lower down the opacity. PX16, so padding left and right 4 rem, and PY6, padding top and bottom 1.5 rem. Text is going to be white, and to create the glass effect, we're going to use backdrop blur medium. And for the medium screens, we are going to change the justify between to justify evenly. Inside the nav, first we're going to create a logo, and this logo will be on the left. So we are going to create this first. If you have a logo, you can put it inside this anchor tag, or if you're just going to use your name, you can put your name inside. We're going to set the href to home, and now if you click on it, it is not going to lead you to anywhere because we have not created the home yet. But once we create the home and you click on this anchor tag, it is going to take you back to the home section. So this text is going to have a gradient background. So let's set the background gradient to right, from blue 500 to pink 500. And to put this gradient background inside the text, we need to clip the text to the background using background clip text. And to see through the text, we need to set the text to the transparent and lower down the opacity to 80 for the hover effect. Let's make the text larger and font semi-bold. Transition all for the hover effect. Let's set the duration to 300 to make it smooth. And when you hover over this anchor tag, opacity is going to be 100. So we have created the logo. Right under this, we're going to create a unordered list for the list elements. So for the responsiveness, once the viewport gets smaller, this list of elements are going to be hidden. And once the viewport is bigger than medium, it is going to be flex. I'm going to set the gap to 10. And inside we're gonna have a couple of anchor tags. The first one is going to lead to the home. Inside this anchor tag, we're gonna have a list item that says home. Cursor pointer, when you hover over it, this will indicate that this is something clickable. Opacity to 70% for the hover effects. Same transition effects. And when you hover over it, we will set the opacity to 100%. We can just copy and paste it for the others. Change this to tech. Copy and paste it. This one is going to be projects. And the final one is going to be contact. And right after this unordered list, we're going to have another unordered list. So under this, let's create another one. This one is going to have the same styling. So let's just copy and paste this and lower the gap to 5. Inside this one, we're going to have the social media links. So let's create a list item. Cursor pointer. Text X large and lower down the opacity. The same transition we have used before. When you hover over this one, it is going to be red 500. And we are going to up the opacity to 100%. So this first one is going to be the YouTube logo. Because we have installed React icons, we can easily import a icon. Let's say BS YouTube, and at the top it automatically imported this icon from React icons library. Let's copy and paste this for the others. This one is going to be LinkedIn. Let's change the color to blue. Copy and paste again. This one is going to be Twitter. Let's change the color. Copy and paste again. And this final one is going to be GitHub. Let's change the color to orange. And let's see how it looks. And there we have the navigation bar with the logo and links. The icons are looking well. Now let's create the responsiveness part. So as you can see, once the viewport gets smaller, we are not displaying these two unordered lists. Once they become hidden, you're gonna put a menu icon here. And when you click on that icon, there is going to be a drop-down menu. Let's leave it like this to be able to see it. To be able to create the menu, we're gonna use state. Let's create a state variable named isOpen and set isOpen. And the initial state is going to be false. And to update the state, you're going to create a function named menuOpen. Inside, using the setter function setIsOpen, we are going to reverse the state of isOpen. So this useState variable basically keeps track of the menu. The initial state is false because the menu will be closed when you open the website. And this setter function is basically responsible for updating this current state. As I said, we are going to create a menu icon here. And once you click on that menu icon, we are going to call this function to reverse this state, which will be true. And that means the menu will be open. And we're going to design a separate menu for that case. And if you click on the menu icon again, this is going to reverse, turn to false again. And that will mean the menu is closed. So let's use this function. Scroll down. Right under this unordered list, still inside the navigation bar, let's open up a set of curly braces and create a if statement. So if isOpen is true, we are going to display a X icon, BIX. And if it's not open, you're going to display a menu icon. And when you click each of these icons using onClick, we're going to call the menuOpen function. So if the menu is open, the icon is going to turn a X icon, indicating that if you click on it again, the menu will be closed. And if it's not open, we are going to keep displaying the menu icon, indicating that if you click on this menu icon, the menu will be open. Let's also style these icons. They are going to be displayed as block elements, and for the medium screens, it is going to be hidden. Let's increase the size as well. Copy and paste it for the other one as well. Now let's create the responsive menu. You're gonna open up another set of curly braces, and if is open is true, gonna display this div, which is going to be pretty much the same navigation bar as this one. It is going to be fixed to the right, and from top we're gonna put this space 84 pixels. Let's make it a flex container and set the height to screen, width to 50%, flex direction to column, and let's also bring the items to the top left by setting the items to the start and justify start, gap 10, and let's have a border on the left. Let's make the border gray. Let's also create a transparent background and some padding. So this div is going to be displayed only if the menu is open. So we need to either display it as a block element, or we need to set the display to hidden. To be able to do it, first we are going to turn this into a dynamic string. Let's use backticks. And using the $sign and curly braces, let's set a condition. If is open is true, we are going to display this div as a block level element, or is open is false, you're gonna set it to hidden. Inside, we can copy and paste the same anchor tags from this unordered list. Let's copy and paste it inside a unordered list. Let's set the unordered list to a flex container, change the flex direction to column, and put some gap between the elements. And let's copy and paste these social links as well. Right under this unordered list, we are going to change the classes of this unordered list to flex and flex wrap. And gap 5, we used flex wrap to be able to make these list elements wrap inside this unordered list if the viewport gets smaller. And let's see how it looks. As you can see, we have the drop down menu. Once I click on it, the icon turns into X icon. And if I click on it and close it, it turns into the menu icon. We have the links and social media icons as well. Once the viewport gets smaller, they wrap inside their container. Everything looks fine. Now we can create the home section. The next component that we are going to create is the hero section. Before we start to create it, let's add the images that we are going to use. You can find all the images that I'm going to use in the description. I will just copy and paste it inside my public folder. These are the images. So for the hero section, let's give this ID home. So padding on the right and left, 16. Flex, and let's make it cover the entire page. Width full. Center the items inside. And the padding UI is going to be 28. For the medium screens, PX 32. So this is the container. Inside, we're going to create another div, which is going to be another flex container. Flex direction column, and center the items. Gap 10, and the text inside is going to be white. Inside, we're going to have this div with the image inside. Let's import the image that we are going to use. The image is inside the public folder, so dash public image.jpg, and using curly braces, let's put it inside this image. Let's set the width to 300 pixels, cursor pointer, and let's make it circular by setting rounded full. We also gonna create a colorful shadow effect, so shadow X large, and we're gonna make it indigo 900. Transition for the hover effect, transition duration 300. So when you hover over this image, we are going to move it on the UI axis by 5, so top 5. So we're gonna move it to the top by 20 pixels, and on hover the image is going to get a little bit bigger. We're also gonna make the shadow bigger, and the shadow is going to be indigo 600. Also for the medium screens, width is going to be 350. So right under this div, you're going to create another div, which is going to be a flex container and a max width of 600 pixels, flex direction column, and center the items, gap 3, and center the text. Inside, we're going to have a h1, a h3, and a paragraph. You can type down your own name inside this h1. It is going to have the same gradient effect as the logo inside the navbar, so we can go inside the navbar and basically copy and paste this. And let's copy and paste this styling. We can delete all of these hover effects and font semi-bold as well. Let's make the text 5x large, font light, and for the medium screens text 7x large. Inside the h3 you can type down your job title. We're gonna use the same gradient effect. Let's copy and paste this. We are going to reverse the colors, so from pink 500 to blue 500. This is going to be text 2x large, and for the medium screens it is going to be 3x large. Also, let's delete the font light. For the paragraph, I'm just going to copy and paste this text. If you want to use the same one, just pause the video and type down the same. So for the medium screens, text base and text pretty. For the smaller screens, text is going to be small, and let's make it gray 400. And this is how it looks. We have the hover effect and the gradient text. Before we go to the next part, let's also create the framermotion effects. So using framermotion is pretty straightforward. To be able to use it, we are going to import this component called motion from framermotion. And all we need to do is to apply this motion to the elements that we want to animate. Let's say I want to bring this image from top to the bottom a little bit. All I need to do is to click at the start of this div and type down motion. Now this is turned into a motion div, and that means we can apply some properties to this element to create an animation. To be able to create a simple animation, we will use properties such as initial, animate, and transition. So initial is basically the starting point, and animate is basically what is going to happen. And transition is kind of the same transition we use with the hover effects in terms of making it more smooth. So in this case, if I want to move this image from top to the bottom a little bit, I can set it to UI -50. That means top -50. And also I can set the opacity to 0. And for the animation, I will bring it back to the 0. And I will up the opacity to 1. And the duration is going to be just a little bit slower than 1 second. So 0.8. And also we can set a delay for this animation so it doesn't happen too quickly. Let's set it to 0.2. If I refresh the page, you can see it is invisible at the start and then it becomes visible and it moves from top to bottom. Let's do the same for this text. This time they are going to come from bottom to the top. So just like we did with this one, we can turn this div into a motion div and just copy and paste the same animation. All we need to do is to change this -50 to 50. And as you can see, the text is moving from bottom to the top and the image is the opposite. And this is how we can create a simple animation like this using framermotion. Now that we finished this part, we can move on to the next one. In this part, we are going to create the text section. Let's click on tech. So let's give a ID to this div, tech, delete the text. So this component is not going to cover the entire page, so we don't need to set it to minimum age screen. We're gonna set it to minimum age 70 VH. That means 70% of the viewport height, width full, and flex direction column. Center the items, gap 16, and for the screens that are medium, gap is going to be 32. Inside, we're going to have this H1 that says technologies. Let's set the text to 4x large, font light, text white, and for the medium screens, text is going to be 6x large. Let's scroll down a little bit so we can see it. So right under this H1, we're going to create a div, which is also going to be a flex container, and we're going to set the wrap to flex wrap, items center, and justify center, gap 10, and padding 5. Inside this div, we are going to be displaying the technology icons, and we're going to put the icons into divs. Let's set it to cursor pointer, text to 80 pixels. This one is going to be text sky 500. The same transition we use. And when you hover over it, we are going to move it to the top by 5. And for these smaller screens, text is going to be 100 pixels. For the medium, it is going to be 120. And in this case, what we mean by text is the icons. So you can think of these as the scale of the icons. So inside this first one, I will put a TypeScript icon. And I just made a small mistake. These classes are going to be for the icon itself. This div is only going to be useful for us when we create the framermotion effect. So let's delete this for now. And let's copy and paste it. So this one is going to be JavaScript. Let's turn this to orange. Copy and paste it again. Let's set this one to Docker. Copy and paste again. This one is going to be Tailwind. Copy and paste it. Let's make this one Node. And the final one is going to be Postgre. And as you can see, this is how it looks. Next, we are going to create the framermotion effects. So let's scroll to the top. Just like we did a minute ago, we are going to import the motion from framermotion. And starting with this H1, we are going to turn these elements into motion elements. We are going to do something different this time. We are not going to hard code the animation for each one. Instead, we're going to create this little object here named variants. And inside, we are going to create the properties that we are going to use, such as hidden, opacity 0, and UI 50. So this is basically the starting point, just like we did with the other component. First, the element is not going to be visible and its position is going to be 50 by UI axis. And when it becomes visible, it is going to be opacity 1 and UI to its default position. And now we can use this inside this motion diffs. Let's pass it as variance. So initial position is going to be hidden, and while in view, so as you scroll through this section and these elements are in the viewport, it is going to be visible. And we're going to set the transition to duration 0.5. We can do the same for the other elements inside this div. So to change multiple lines, you can press on Ctrl, and while you're pressing on Ctrl, just click on different lines. Click on the start of these divs and type down motion. And now we can copy and paste these properties. So seems like we have made some mistakes. Let's check the console. So here looks like we have a invalid property named class inside app. Let's see. This needs to be class name. And looks like the other one is visible is not defined inside the tag. Let's see. So looks like we have passed visible as a variable, but it needs to be a text. Let's change the other ones as well. Let's see if everything is working fine. And after I refresh, the errors are gone. Let's see if everything is working fine. And there you go. We have the small animation on the technologies section as well. So now that we finished this, we can go to the next part. So the next part is the project section. But before we start, let's go into the index CSS file and set the scroll behavior to smooth. This is basically going to make the transition between sections more smooth. And also let's style the scroll bar. We can select the scroll bar like this and increase the width a little bit. And we can select the background. We can set it to this black color, which is just a little bit transparent. Also, we can select the thumb, and we are going to copy and paste this linear gradient. You can pause the video and type down the same colors. And oops, these are going to be scroll bar. There you go. Now that we are finished with this, we can go back into the project section. So first, let's import the images that we are going to use inside this section. Image 1, image 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's change these. 3, 4, and 5. And let's also import motion from framermotion right away. We are going to be using the animations for this section as well. And before we go into this component, first let's create the data that we are going to display. Let's create an array named projects data. Inside we are going to have a couple of objects that has properties such as image, and the image property is going to have these images inside, and the title is going to be the project name. So you can change the names and images of these projects with your own projects. Let's also have a description. Let's copy and paste a lorem text. And the technologies. You can type down the technologies that you use inside the project. And now we are going to copy and paste this and basically populate this array. So now that we have the data that we are going to display, we can go into this component. Let's give this div a ID of projects. Let's set it to a flex container. Set the minimum height to screen with full, flex direction column, and center the items. Gap 16, padding 4, and for the medium screens, padding on the x-axis is going to be 14, and padding on the y-axis is going to be 24. Inside, we're going to have this h1 that says my projects. Let's increase the size of the text, font light, text white, and for the medium screens, it is going to be 6x large. Right under this, we're going to create another div, which is also going to be a flex container with full. Maximum width is going to be 1000 pixels. Flex direction column, gap 16, and text white. So for now, we are going to leave this empty because we are going to be using another component to display and put this data in. We don't have to create a separate file for it. We can just create it here. It is going to be project card. And it is going to return this div. So inside this project card, we are basically going to display the images, titles, and descriptions coming from this array. And we are going to pass the data that we are going to display as a prop. And it is going to be project. So inside this div, there is going to be the image. And right under it, another div that has two more divs inside. And this one is going to display the title. And the one underneath is going to display the description. Let's also turn this into a paragraph. So this is the card container. The image is going to be on the left, and this div is going to display the information. Let's create another one and wrap these text inside this div. The image that we are going to display is going to come from the project.image. Also, let's make this div a flex container, change the flex direction to column, and center the items. Gap 8. For the medium screens, flex direction is going to be row, and for the medium screens, gap is going to be 24. This container div that is going to display the text. Let's turn this into a flex container as well. And gap 5, the image is going to have a width of full, cursor pointer, rounded corners, and a transition for the hover effect. So when you hover over it, you're going to increase the scale to 105. And for the screens that are medium, I'm going to set the width 300 pixels. Also, let's put some gap between these two texts. Let's increase the size of this text and set the font to semi-bold. Let's make this one gray 400. And right under this div, we're gonna have another div that will display the technologies that used inside this project. Let's set the wrap to flex wrap and some gap between the elements. So to display the text, we're gonna use a set of curly braces, and using the map method on the array, we are going to be displaying the tag. And let's also have an index for the key. Let's display them inside a span. Display the tag. When you use the map function to create elements like this, you need to give them keys. In this case, the index is going to be key. Let's give it some rounded corners, background black, and padding 3. So now that this card is done, we can go into the main component, and inside curly braces, again, we will use the map method over project's data. And for every project, you're gonna have a index, and for every project we are going to create a project card that will have props such as key as the index and project as the project. And now if I scroll down here, you can see the project section. We have the image on the left with hover effects, and there is the information and technologies that are used. Now let's add the framermotion. So again, I will show you a different way of using framermotion. You're gonna create a function called scroll reveal, and it is going to be displaying the children element. And the children element is going to be wrapped around a motion div. So let's turn this into a motion div. And inside, we're gonna display the children. Let's set some properties. So initially, the opacity is going to be 0 and UI 100. While you scroll down, opacity up to 1 and UI 0, so default position. And to make it work, we will set viewport once true. That means this animation is going to happen once this section is on the viewport, and transition 0.8. So now we can use this scroll reveal to wrap around these elements. Let's go into the project card and wrap this around a scroll reveal. Let's do the same for the H1 as well. And let's see if it's working fine. And as you can see, the projects are coming one by one. So now that we finished this one as well, only part left is the contact form. To create the contact form, let's go into the component. Let's give it a ID of contact, delete this text, turn this into a flex container, and set the minimum height to 70 VH. Width full, item center. Inside, we're gonna have another div that is also going to be flex and flex direction column. Center the items, gap 3, and space UI 6. Padding 14. Inside, you're gonna have a H1, and inside you're gonna have a span that says get in touch. Let's give it a background gradient to right from indigo 500 to blue 500. Clip the text to the background and make it transparent. And oops, this one is supposed to be for span, not the H1. Inside H1, let's center the text, make it bigger, and for the medium screens it is going to be 7x large. Right under this H1, we're gonna have this paragraph. Gonna center the text, large and semi-bold. Let's also make it gray 500. Inside, I will just copy and paste this text. Right under the paragraph, you're gonna have this anchor tag that says contact me. Because we have two words inside, we don't want the text to wrap, so let's set it to text no wrap. Rounded corners and a border. Border is going to be indigo 600, background black. Padding on the x-axis is going to be 5, padding y 3. Let's make the text large and font bold. Text white. And we're gonna create the same colorful shadow effect we did with the home image. So shadow indigo 700 and transition for the hover effect. Duration 300 And when you hover over this button, we're gonna move it to the top by 2, and shadow is going to be bigger, and indigo 600. And also this is just going to be contact. We don't need to put a hash at the beginning. And this is how it looks. So at the beginning of the video I told you I will explain how to make this button work. We will use this simple HTML trick. So inside href you can use mail to, and if you type down your own email like this is my actual email. So if a user clicks on this button, the default mail application of their OS is going to be open. So you can give this a try on your own. For some reason my recording software doesn't record the mail application, but it works fine. Before we finish, let's see if everything is working fine. We have the navbar and the social icons. We can scroll through these sections. The framer animations are working fine. Let's see the responsiveness. The responsiveness is working well for every section. Everything looks fine. And this is how we can create this modern portfolio website using React, Tailwind, and framermotion. I hope you guys enjoyed it and find it helpful. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.